Quick reminder before we get started, if you haven't subscribed or followed this podcast on your favorite podcast platform yet, I would really appreciate it if you click the follow button now or the subscribe button, as it will really help us a lot. In this episode of Recovery Snippets, I interview Krista Couch, also known as the Binge Eating Coach in Instagram and social media as well, talks about the aspect of how restriction can actually be causing your urges to binge eat or causing you to binge eat, and what can we do about restriction, as well as not the simple way of we normally think of restriction as like hunger, but like also the idea of mental restriction, psychological restriction. So let's listen to Krista and what she has to say about restriction and binge eating.
Restriction, pretty much everybody that binges at some point, this has been a factor. And that's because when you're not giving your body enough fuel, you're not giving your body enough food, your body's going to think that something's wrong and ask for more food. That's really like the fundamental basic way of explaining that. And this is where intuitive eating, that book can be really helpful for people in really understanding the ways that thinking about food in a diety way for most of their life impacts their ability to listen to their body and honor their hunger and honor their fullness. So that's pretty much always a factor. I think something I always like to explain to people is the Angel Keys study, where a group of men ate 1,500 calories per day and started to show very quickly signs of starvation, like obsessing about recipes, having more mental health struggles. Like when you really look at that study, it's mind blowing the amount of symptoms that there were, severe symptoms for eating 1,500 calories a day. Like that is still widely recommended. Like, tons of people think that that's completely fine to eat 1,500 calories, and yeah, maybe, like, women, men, there's differences, but still, like, the amount of calories that many diets recommend is just not enough, and so, even if you you think you're doing a relatively good job of letting go of that mentality and not dieting, there still might be things that are making it hard to start eating when you're hungry and stop when you're full just because you have this history with dieting. So that plays a huge role. But then there's also this other piece, and like this is something that encompasses both the habit and emotion piece. Is a lot of people will say, okay, like I'm eating enough throughout the day, I'm listening to my body, but then I get to the evening and I've been busy all day and there's a lot going on, and I start eating a cookie and then I reach for another cookie and then I just can't stop eating. And what's often happening is there's this moment of intense desire. Like the cookie tastes good. Cookies taste good. But when you're eating the cookie and it tastes good, and then you just say, screw it, I'll just eat more and I'll be better tomorrow. I'll make up for it tomorrow. There can be this moment of relief where, like, instead of feeling restless and instead of feeling this intense desire, it's like, oh, like, I'm just able to eat cookies. And even if it's just relief for a moment, even if you're like being completely mean to yourself and beating up on yourself like 30 minutes later, that doesn't matter. You're feeling relief in that moment. And that's even just understanding that can be so freeing for people. It's like, oh, that's what's happening. But I'm thinking that there's just something broken about me because I beat myself up right after this happens, but I still don't understand why it's happening. And so that can be huge.
Yeah, and I think when people think like, oh, I've been eating regular meals, but then I just eat, I get these intense cravings for cookies and everything. I've been trying to be so good as much as possible. And they
Yeah.
try to point it down to themselves as if that they're the lazy ones. They don't have any willpower. If this person on social
Mhm.
media is telling me to eat chicken, broccoli, and rice, and from what it seems, this person says he or she is having chicken, broccoli, rice 7 times a week, no cheat days, no cookies. It could really like mess up with your brain, especially since social
Yeah.
media, everyone follows. You don't really see what their true habits are, especially with people on social media. anyone can have eating disorders, disordered eating habits, where they're not people to look up to.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's something that is important for people to recognize is there might be days where like chicken, rice, and veggies sound good, or that like you end up eating less. And then the next day, your body can regulate and say, hey, I need more. And our bodies do a fantastic job of that. But when you add in comparison and when you add in all of these different rules, it's so hard to just listen to that. It's so hard to actually enjoy the variety of meals, enjoy the chocolate cake and the broccoli and chicken. And I think that that for me has been the best part about not dieting, not having any of that is just like, yeah, there's some days where I end up eating less. There's some days that I end up eating more, and none of it has to lead to this like emotional overwhelm of I messed up. I need to get back on track.
Mm.
Or like I'm doing so good because I ate the good meal that I see on social media. Like none of that emotional roller coaster has to happen. It's so free.
Mm. So, like, to get rid of restriction, most of the times you'd have to eat more and eat the foods ideally you crave during the moment, not like replace it with a banana or something. Going back
Yeah.
to your personal story, because there must have been a moment where this must have been like, that's the way I'm meant to be getting rid of binge eating. I have to eat what I'm craving. I have to eat regular meals. I have to eat a little more than usual. How did you react the first time you found out you had to eat more?
Well, I think that like I understood it for a while, like kind of. And then I remember it really just hitting me like, I don't want to gain weight. I don't want to like really I think I'm still binge eating, I'm still struggling, but like I don't really want to give into this process because it's scary and it brought up a lot of fears. I remember bringing that up with somebody that was helping me, and it was a dietitian actually. And I remember her just saying like, would you rather gain more weight and not be struggling with this or continue to struggle with this for the rest of your life? And like that was a really hard thing for me to grapple with. Like it sounds like a straightforward question now. It's like, okay, obvious. Like I would rather have gained all of the weight and felt healthy and not felt out of control and not had this emotional burden. Like give me all the weight. Like, I'd rather have that. At the time, there was no trust in that. There was so much fear. I wasn't ready to do that. And I think that for me, like, really having that laid out for me, like, these are your options. I had to sit with that for a couple of years, not days, not months. Like, it took me a while to really get to the point where I was ready to say, yeah, I'd rather gain weight. And then what happened is I didn't really gain weight, but my that was just my story, that was where I was at. But as soon as I really chose that, like, I need to just listen to my body and eat the things that I wanna eat and know that, like, my body's regulating itself, like, things just got so much easier. My body just all of a sudden started regulating, and, like, I'd go to the doctor year after year and like, "Oh, my weight's same, clothes still fit the same," and, like, I haven't obsessed about my weight. Um, I did just I gave birth in December. I just had a baby boy, and my weight did go up when I was pregnant. I don't know exactly how much. I did not pay attention closely. I've seen, like, a few things on medical records,
Mm.
but I think the really freeing part of that is that, like, I'm like, "Okay, I gained weight," and, like, I've seen other things posted where people are pregnant and they're freaking out about that.
Oh
And for
no.
me, like, there has been adjustments, like, I've had moments where I've had bad body image moments, and, like, I've shown up for myself in those moments, but panicked. I haven't been like, "Oh, no, I'm gaining weight," or, "Oh, no, I don't have my old body back." It's just been like, "Okay." And I think it's because I already did the work of accepting that possibility of, like, my body being bigger, and I still am at a very, like, socially acceptable weight and don't have to deal with some of the bias that many people do. So I fully understand that. But I think that having the ability to know, like, okay, I could be in a body that even wasn't accepted widely. And if I'm feeling healthy, I'm feeling mentally healthy and physically healthy, I'm totally okay with that. I think that that is such a big hurdle that took me a long time to get through. But once I did, man, things got easier.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge pivotal thing that many people that binge eat have to work through. And it can be something that's not easy to just snap out of. But if you can accept yourself at a higher weight than you are now, you no longer have to worry about putting a few pounds.